Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now in today's one we're taking a look at the Grand Theft Auto Definitive Edition Trilogy running with the developer stated minimum requirements. I've gone with the AMD FX 6300 and GTX 760 combo along with 8GB of DDR3 RAM. I saw a video from Joker Productions where he used a DX12 launch argument supposedly to make the games smoother, so I've enabled that as well. It seems to help a little bit even though the 760 doesn't fully support DX12, but all I know is that the frame times were a little better when doing this. All three games default to somewhere around medium settings on startup, at least at the time of this video. If you're watching this a month, 6 months or years after I've uploaded it, then everything I'm saying might not apply. All I did here, in addition to sticking with the default settings, was disable motion blur and depth of field and turn street and vehicle lighting quality all the way down to low, because this helps with the performance at night time. In-game night time. I probably didn't have to confirm that, but anyway, we actually averaged 60 FPS in GTA 3 with these settings. The CPU is more than capable of handling this game and the rest of the trilogy, so as you might have guessed, the graphics card is the limiting factor. 8GB of RAM also seems sufficient, but 16 never hurt anyone. There's no built-in benchmarking run, so all I could do was play the game for half an hour, all while counting the frame rates and frame times using MSI Afterburner's built-in software. As you can see by the 1.1% lows, the frame rate did dip towards 30, though I didn't notice it dip any lower than 35 when actually playing. I then turned everything down to low. I'm not sure if the screen reflections option is the lowest, but it definitely gives us the highest frame rate. This is probably one of the most demanding settings, so watch out for this one. If you decide to play on low settings with hardware like this, then you'll see an improvement to the average and 1% low figures, but the 0.1% low was actually a bit worse. This actually made GTA 3 feel a bit worse this time around. I'd rather play on the default medium settings, to be fair. The average isn't as good, but the game feels a lot more consistent. GTA Vice City is the most demanding of the trilogy, perhaps because of all the 80s neon lighting everywhere. That and the extra grass and trees certainly contribute to lower performance figures. You'll definitely spend more time in the 30 to 40 FPS range here, but the minimum specs so far are pretty accurate. Now, I quite like the art style of these games as well. I know a lot of you might disagree, and while I think that some magic has certainly been lost in comparison to the originals, these games can still look great in certain areas. Nothing beats the original though, and that pretty much applies to everything. Turning things down to low, like before, gave us much better results. There were still frame time issues here and there, but it is what it is, and for the most part it's playable and enjoyable. I spent my time playing as a paramedic, a mini-game that requires a lot of fast-paced driving all over the island. Most of the time my terrible driving skills meant that I was creating more customers as opposed to rescuing already injured members of the public, but there we go. Vice City, as I said before, is certainly the most demanding game in the trilogy due to the extra on-screen effects and things like that. I think it is mainly the lighting and the trees and the grass, because when you sort of run over the grass or run towards the trees, the frame rate does noticeably dip, but again, it doesn't really go below 30 here. Now, San Andreas seems to run the best of this trilogy. I don't know if it's because more time was put into it or whether it's got something to do with the more sort of spread out and open map, but it runs the best in terms of an average with the same default settings as the previous two times. All three games default to the same options on startup and feature the same graphical options in the menu, so what you saw in the GTA 3 menu is exactly applicable here, and the same goes for Vice City. There were dips yet again to the mid-30s, but the game remained playable. I do miss the reduced draw distance. I know the fog was used in the original game because of technical limitations, but it ended up actually adding to the atmosphere. I miss that sort of orange hue that the PS2 version had as well, even though flying a plane at dusk, like I'm doing here, can still look pretty great. Seeing Mount Chiliad from Ganton or even as we fly over Los Santos does seem a little bit off though, even if it is quite impressive. Going down to the lowest settings here once again makes the biggest difference. We've gone from around 60 FPS to around 90, which is a huge performance jump. The performance increased so much that I thought I must have actually changed resolution accidentally, but nope, 1080p low transforms the gameplay in a way. I can't speak for the entirety of the map or the other cities, but my half-hour low settings test consisting of causing carnage around Los Santos gave us a mostly decent experience, but you should be aware that there will be dips in all of the games, and although they might not be as bad as you might initially think, well, they are still noticeable, and I think this DX12 shortcut launch thing may have actually helped a bit, so that's worth bearing in mind, especially if you have more powerful hardware that can lock the game to 60 frames per second most of the time. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. This has been the GTA Trilogy minimum specs system build. If you enjoyed it, leave a like down below, leave a dislike if you didn't, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.